Hey everyone, it's Joe Glines, and today I'm talking with James Griffing, and James is down in Austin, so I'm talking to somebody actually in Texas, which is, you can tell from both of our accents, right? It's so clear. I'm kidding. Either of us are actually from Texas. You said you're from all over, like kind of like me. And why don't you go ahead and give us a little bit of background in using computers and your whatever is relevant as far as that, or programming wise.
Okay. I don't have any school education for programming or anything, but whenever I was a teenager, I would use MySpace and I would find layouts that other people have created and find copy and paste all that code. And I would see that the value blue was in there and I would change it, and I saw it changed to green. And I thought that was real neat. So I just started going in and looking at code and started tweaking the values and seeing where it was relevant and started making my own layouts. From there, I wanted to see if I could change layouts on other pages or CSS. So I found Stylish, which is an add-on to where you can manipulate like the code on Google and make it black instead of white for the background. So I started manipulating all of that. I wrote my own styles. That's what they call them. They call them user styles for Stylish.
Now, and is that actually is that in the browser where it gets applied?
It gets applied in the browser. It's a local file.
Yeah, okay.
But you can they have userstyles.org, and that's where it has a whole bunch of styles. You can see some for YouTube where they have a dark theme. Anyway, I found that at that site, and from there I was able to read other code that other people have created.
You just reminded me, sorry, real quickly, of I kind of did something like that with AutoHotkey where we were using SharePoint at work, and the web page would come up, but it never had kind of like the other thing you were alluding to. We were talking off camera a little bit of a project where you said you could have your text here, but then it would know hey, when it's this is the thing that goes with it, right? Mm-hmm. And I'm like, you know what? I can rewrite my web page that when it reads it, it actually puts in the information I need to have, right? So I was trying to explain the concept to my boss, and he didn't get it. And so I'm like, well, let me do something real quickly. So we were at Texas Instruments, TI.com, and our main competitor is ADI.com. And so I rewrote our page to make it look like, instead of saying Texas Instruments, it said, I'm trying to remember, analog devices. So he's at my computer, and I'm like, here, check this out. And I'm showing him, I'm loading. He's seeing me load the page, but it's saying analog devices. And he was freaking out. And I'm like, no. I'm like, this is just on my computer. Like I am manually rewriting this page. But anyway, it was very funny. I'm like, yeah, it's okay. It's not the end of the world. It's just a local page. Sorry.
Yeah, it's funny whenever you're showing someone who doesn't quite understand. I think it's all magic. And,
right.
Yeah,
right.
And once you actually understand it, it's very simple and it's not complex.
It is. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah. When you start breaking it down little by little, it's like, oh, okay. Well, CSS, so that's one of those, I don't know a ton about it, but I do at least understand one minor tweak somewhere can have these amazing effects everywhere, right? I mean, with how it's built, right? And that's the beauty and the weakness, or, however you want to look at it, the vulnerability of man, you change one thing and it can help, but boy, it can really monkey things up too.
Oh yeah, whenever I think of web pages in general, I try to think of the HTML as the skeleton, the CSS is the skin, so it's the appearance of the page, and JavaScript's the brain, the logic. But yeah, the CSS, it can modify all the links if you just put a little wildcard in there, and it's pretty neat. But from CSS, that's not really a programming language.
Yeah.
From there, I'm going to share my screen just to.
Sure.
Share. Okay, this is just Google's homepage. This bar up here is a script that I made. It's a JavaScript. It loads locally into Google, so it just injects it into the Google's page. And I have it where I can dynamically change anything. I can add more links into it. If I want to put my last name up here, I could do that. I can change all these links. If I want to put the automator, I could. And as soon as I type, HTTPS.
No, I haven't dealt with that.
Okay.
There's a dash in there too. The dash.
Okay, yeah. Is .org or .com?
It's .com.
Okay. And now right up here, if I click it, if I typed it correctly, it'll go to the automator.com.
Cool.
But whenever I go back to Google, it'll always stay there.
Yeah, got you. Yeah, neat.
Anyway, from that's where I started learning more about the programming side of things. I'm like I can go in and grab a variable and save that variable, and that to me is just so neat, just to have that. Anyway, back to how do I stop sharing? There we go.
So how did you actually let's back up a step even then. Like, why did you even start looking for AutoHotkey in the first place, or did someone introduce you? How did you hear about it? Like, what was the process?
I believe it was Chad that said that he learned from RuneScape, and I actually learned from the same thing. RuneScape is just a game. I wanted to automate it because it has a whole bunch of tasks that you are just so tedious. You know, just click here, it's the same click. So there, I went into I searched and I found AutoHotkey, and I found that I could just do mouse point or mouse click and it clicks there. That was very powerful.
Yeah.
And then I didn't really utilize it very much until I got into a job data entry.
Yeah.
And from there I worked in. They had a system that was like from the 90s. It was very outdated. It was Citrix, and I had to connect to another server. And from that server, they had their own macro program, but it would not work. Like the boss strictly told everyone, do not use it because it would crash the system because it's so outdated. Anyway, I wanted to see if I could just start looking into it, and it was automotive contracts, like the gap contracts. That was what I was working for. And then you would have to look into the serial of the VIN on a vehicle, and an I and a 1 look the same.
Okay, yeah.
But there are no I's in a VIN number because of that fact.
Oh, okay.
So I wanted to see if I can logic, have the computer look at that type of thing for me, and it was able to do that. I didn't have a GUI at the time. It would just copy and then put logic and then tell me if there was a flag, and I would edit it.
Yeah.
And then I learned a little bit more about GUIs. All of this stuff I would learn at work, and the boss wouldn't really know. But as you mentioned, once you're automating things, it's quicker, and you can have a little free time to help learn, to educate, to make other things quicker.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
And this was about 4 or 5 years ago that I started messing with this data entry job. It was closer to 6 years ago, actually. I didn't know anything about COM then or anything. I would just manipulate anything on the clipboard, and from that clipboard, I would change everything. But it's super powerful what you can do with AutoHotkey. Like I had it set to where it would autocorrect the name of a city. I had a file that had every zip code in there. It was 50 files based on each state. And it would go in, if it was in Texas, it would look up Texas, and it would look up 78613. It would pull up my zip code in Cedar Park, Austin. I don't know what else would pull up. But if it saw that there were certain characters, and it would do a percentage match, and whatever had the most match, it would correct it based on that. They wanted one contract every 55 seconds. But with this, I could do a contract in 15 seconds. Yeah. So I was able to just do a whole lot. Like I had it where it would tell me how many contracts I have done for the day. So if my quota was right, I could go in and fix it. But, that script was probably about 2,000 lines long after I worked on it. I worked on it for about 7 months. I don't have that visible where I can show you, but
no worries.
It was really neat GUI. It would just make everything so much simpler. And then like one little neat thing that I would do, I would listen or watch movies while I was at work on dual monitors,
Yeah.
but I would make the window transparent where you could hardly see it. So I was working in cubicles. No one knew I was watching anything. I would do that with YouTube video stuff. One time my boss actually sat down at my cubicle and she never even noticed the video playing right in front of her. It was pretty neat.
That's funny.
It's just really cool what you can do with AutoHotkey. Anything you can imagine, if you think hard enough, you can
Agreed.
Have it in front of you what you want.
Yeah. Yeah.
And what's funny is I actually talked about my boss about AutoHotkey before I really started using it, and she told me not to use it because she didn't understand. Yeah. Whenever I left that job, I wanted to show her everything I created, and I showed her, and she was just flabbergasted. She was amazed on what it could do. I believe she regrets not letting me work on it in public, but
right.
I think it's just funny.
You know, it's funny. I never did that when I left. I should have, but because I was in the same boat of I was told literally not to automate things, and so of course I'm like, there's no way I'm doing this manually, right? It's not even that I'm that lazy. I'm lazy, but you know what? I'm like, still, it's just I'm not gonna spend my time on something when I can be doing something more productive, right? So that's just the way I am, and so I would always do that, but I never showed them, like I shared some. I had at my previous positions I had shared some stuff, but when I left, it's so much of the stuff I had made was customized for my position, and I had other colleagues that had the same positions as I did, and I still couldn't share it with them because like word got out on one where they saw me doing it, and they were jealous. And they're like, "Wow, Joe's automated this stuff," and that's when my boss is like, "Don't automate this. There's no reason to." And I'm like, "Why do you think my friend, my colleague that mentioned it to you?" mentioned it because she was so jealous because it was so much faster. I'm like, yeah, okay, whatever.
It's more efficient. Computers like make less mistakes than people
absolutely do. Yeah. Now, granted, I at the beginning I might make something wrong, consistently wrong, but you got to check it more at the beginning. And that was the other thing is like I don't automate everything entirely and not look at it. I generally automate a process and I can still inspect right before I hit like submit or whatever, right? I can give it a quick review and go, oh, it looks good, but it just depends on obviously the project, but that mindset of just the fear of the unknown. I think that's a big one. I guess it's also not understanding correctly, kind of like back with that example we're talking about with the web page. They think you're going to break the server somehow, for things that are local. You're like, it doesn't work like that. I'm sending keystrokes to my computer just like I'm doing as a human, for the most part. I mean, it's not that different.
Maybe you have to show them in airplane mode and they might understand it better. Yeah. So no internet.
Yeah.
No, I had something, but I forgot what I was going to say. I'll let you continue with something.
Well, so once you we were talking a bit about how you got started in AutoHotkey, and then for doing some gaming stuff, and then you started applying it for your work, and then now help me understand that. I'm just curious, did you jump into using COM, or were you first starting off with sending keystrokes and?
I first started off with sending keystrokes or just clicks and whatnot. COM I haven't messed with. I mean, I messed with in the last year or so, thanks to you. Actually, I learned from your tutorials. But it would just basically manipulate strings is the first thing that I did.
Yeah. Have you played with regular expressions?
Yes, I have. I use regular expressions to make sure addresses were actually addresses.
Oh, awesome! Yeah.
If it wasn't an address, I would have it go and look into Google and just pop it in and see what the first result was.
Yeah, awesome.
But I didn't do that with COM. I just did that with run commands.
If you're interested, by the way, when we're done, I'll show you, ironically, the USPS, they have an API for checking and standardizing addresses. And so I started using that to clean up my address before I would send it to Google to make sure. I mean, Google does a good job of it, but it was just because it was an API that's super lightning fast.
I actually did the same. I didn't use their API, but I would send it with the USPS and stuff. Then before I ever worked for them, which I did work for the USPS. They refused to let me use any AutoHotkey to automate anything.
Of course. Because
It,
wait a minute, because, I mean, I don't blame them because they have nothing to worry about, right? Because they're so efficient and making so much money, they can just waste time, right? Because
I wouldn't say they're efficient, but they work.
I know,
Yeah.
they work harder, not smarter. But anyway, yeah, that's.
But like in one position, they had data reports, like just to generate all the reports that they would need, and it would take this person 4 to 5 hours just to generate everything each day, every single day. Yeah, with COM, you could not even open up Excel and then manipulate everything you need to, and then be on the merry way. Everything that they do, I could have done in 10 minutes.
And
it would have taken a long time to program everything, but that time overall wouldn't have been hundreds of hours.
Yeah. In my department, my colleague who had been doing it for years, he was in charge of our reporting out to the businesses. And out of every month, he spent 40 hours out of that month writing the reporting. And granted, like I said, I took a while to write it, but I had it down to where I could click a button and it would go pull and do everything. It actually did more than what his did. And it did it in like 3 minutes, and I didn't do anything. It just ran in the background. And it was still, I was still working the whole time. And it hyperlinked everything, which his didn't even have that. You could automatically click it and pull up the email campaign, this and that. And anyway, it's so amazing. I'm like, hey, I could build heat maps too, because the data is in there, and I could pull it and show the stuff. And anyway, it's so awesome of what you can do. And then you get that kind of, not the reaction you'd expect, right? When you're like, look, hey, we could do this. And then, although I'm curious your thoughts on this, because I think earlier you mentioned, at least USPS is union stuff, right?
Yeah.
In corporate world too, even, I think often people worry about like their job kind of going away, but I think in a union shop, it's even probably a bigger concern of like, they aren't trying to shrink the payroll, right? There's other objectives.
That right there is probably one of the reasons they did not want to do it. My job in the post office was to sort what you would call junk mail. We call it third class. But like sometimes there'd be little shreds of paper just because that happens. I'm not allowed to throw it away. But the person who does the Nixie job, they are allowed to throw it away. Little things like that. I mean, it came from the mail. I don't have any authority to throw anything from it, or in the trash. It's just unions make everything way more complicated. Sometimes.
When I was younger, they sound good in principle, and then I don't think it's just age, but just things change, and you realize like they do sound good. I want people to make a good wage. At the same time, an employer should actually be smart enough to pay them, a good amount, and not have someone else sucking out all this money from the whole system in the first place. But besides the whole lack of being able to discipline or reward, right? When I used to work in research, I worked for the Department of for DoD agencies like the DIA and CIA and FBI, and I was interviewing all of these people who were leaving. This was after 9/11, right? And all these people were leaving their like DIA, and they were so frustrated because it's all this union crap, and they would see these people who do nothing. They don't do any sort of work, and they still keep moving up the ladder just because they're there. And it really like I can feel it. I had worked at a nonprofit for several years and had the same type of. The nice thing I'll say about nonprofit was, no matter what I wanted to work on, I'd say, hey, can I work on that? And there was no territory on that. They were like, oh, you want to help? Absolutely. So, there were no political boundaries, but the pay was ridiculous. But anyway, yeah. So sorry. Go ahead on where we were going there.
I don't remember the last thing that I said. Sorry.
Well, let's continue on with the whole post office doing the stuff. And then so at the time you were sending keystrokes mostly, and then you've been starting to use COM, but it sounds like regular expressions. That's awesome.
Regular expressions. I started messing with GUIs, and
cool.
can see that I can type in an edit field and then have whatever I type in the edit field go into that program that I need it to go into.
Yeah.
It's a lot easier because their program, you would have to hit like 6 keystrokes just to get into what you need.
Yeah.
Where I would just put everything there and it would just go in and view everything.
Right.
But it would GUI is really, really awesome once you actually learn and get to utilize them.
Yeah, and you don't have to build an overly complex one, right? To still be able to have a nice, like, even if it's just a multi-line edit one, or building in a couple, I don't know if you've used like tree views or list views. They're incredibly powerful and make things so much easier when you have a list of items that you can just, pick and choose from. Maestria, he does stuff. That's Chad, the author of AutoHotkey Studio. I often pay him for doing work, like I'll get work and then I pay him for doing, especially like GUI stuff, because I just don't know it. And in minutes, he creates the most amazing interfaces. And I'm just sitting there scratching my head because I'm like, I would have been there a month and still never come up with something so clear and nice and fast. But yeah,
it takes a while. It's just a lot of keep running the script and see what it looks like and just change it.
But the other one, for anyone who you want to get into GUIs, and I do highly recommend you do it, but here's the biggest thing that I had to realize was you got to rethink programming. It's no longer a linear, like I hit a hotkey and then this and this and this and this. It's because you can jump in anywhere, right? Any of those controls can get activated. And that one took me a while to wrap my brain around, of understanding, when you hit like a submit or something, or even each one, like when you change a drop down, does everything react when that happens, or do you wait for a submit button, and then when you do, you got to go check the things? But it I
mean, luckily for me, whenever I actually first started learning AutoHotkey, I made it with the GUI, so I was forced to. So I didn't think linear really. Then.
Oh, interesting. Yeah.
I had to be like, well, what's gonna go on when this happens? Looking back at the code that I created 6 years ago, it is the messiest thing. I have so many go subs, and
I was talking to Chad about it the other day. I said, I don't think I've written a go sub now in 2 years. And I used to use them all the time, but now almost everything I do is a function. Whether it has a parameter or not, it's like functions are so amazing. And I can use a class, but I don't write classes. And I'm like,
object-oriented language, I don't really understand too much, and I'd like to get better at it. That's powerful stuff too, but
yeah, it is. Functions, for me at least, I'm like, I get functions, and I don't even use them at the optimal level, but boy, they really help your code stay cleaner, so much easier to understand, and much less easier to maintain. I mean, there's so many benefits to just using the functions.
Every once in a while, I still use go subs, but I prefer a function over anything. I don't really like having to define global variables in a function where it would work perfectly in a go sub. Only for that type of reason do I prefer labels, I guess, or routines. Terminology, I don't really know.
No worries. Yeah. Well, no, I mean, because it's still the label. Yeah, it's still like the position of where you're going to go to, right? Like that spot. But I know Chad's explained it a couple times to me, and I'm like, I'm the same way as you. It's like I don't really care, right? I don't use them enough to need to understand the minutia difference between some of these things. It just jumps there. Okay, I get it. That's fine.
Yeah, that's how I look at it. I just, in my head, whenever I see a go sub, I just imagine that bit of code right there. Once it. Just like function, really.
Yeah, but you're right. Scope.
Can't reuse it
with a function. It's one that when the first time you use it, it's really confusing because something works and then you put it in a function and it no longer works and you're like, what the hell? Oh well, that variable that you were using outside of it isn't seen inside unless you pass it or use you can make it global, or then there's the by reference, or then doing a variadic function where you can bring in multiple numbers of things, that you don't actually say how many. It's amazing what you can do. But the vast majority of stuff I do, it's pretty simple, so I don't mess with it a lot.
I actually pulled up the GUI that I made for that data entry job. We can't see it work in action because I don't have that other bit. Yeah. But I'll share my screen.
Cool.
It'll be easier to explain it. Share. My first time using Zoom, so okay.
Oh, I was going to ask you, have you seen or been to our webinars?
I watched them on YouTube.
Cool. Yeah,
and I wanted to join one, but I had to work. Whenever I was working at the Postal Service.
Yeah.
Day off was Tuesdays, but somebody called in, so they needed me. But I would love to actually start joining them now.
Cool. Yeah, if you're ever up this way, let me know. We'll grab lunch and play.
I head to Dallas every once in a while, so that's very likely.
Awesome.
Do you see my screen?
I do, yeah.
Okay. Yeah, so this is the GUI that would help me with the other one. I would never actually use their program at all. Once I had this designed, it would pull up all the information I needed right in here. And I had the other thing just transparent, basically. I didn't need to see it. And then if I hit like the plus, it would type in this, and I would type in whatever it is. And once you hit enter, it would go in and pull up all the information.
Mm-hmm.
And for me to edit the customer's name, it would have all of the stuff right here. But
okay, so you could tweak it. Yeah,
you would be able to tweak it.
Yeah,
you wouldn't have to go in and the way that they did it, you would have to hit tab 3 times and then put CN and then hit enter, and then that would allow you to go to the page to change their information.
Wow. Yeah.
So all I did was just put what I needed right here, and because of that, when I hit enter, it would do all of that. And if any contracts matched with the VIN number would pop up right here. If I had that displayed, it would show all the contracts. So if one of them had, like, sometimes the last letter might get cut off on the last name or something, I can go in and then manipulate and update every single contract, where before that would have been impossible because I would have to go ahead.
Just to clarify, every single is meaning like that same name across different contracts.
Yeah, and the same name would be on different contracts because you'd have like a gap insurance or then road hazard, so they would have multiple packages that they could take. And I would just use the VIN number to connect everything because that was unique to
Gotcha. Right.
It's the ID number, basically.
Yep. Yeah, I can't imagine how much time you would save using this over.
Oh man, it saves so much time.
Yeah.
And if there was an I in the VIN number, it would highlight that right there and say I. And then down here, I would have the messages.
Just to clarify, James, because we said that, or I don't think we said that during our interview, but earlier we were chatting. You know, there in your VIN numbers there were no I's, right?
Right.
So for people who like it didn't make sense, that's
or zeros and an O. They look exactly the same, but there are no O's in a VIN number. There's no Z, Q. But anyway, that's irrelevant. But it would tell me all of that, and it would look into the date of the contract. If it was over a year old, then it was expired. It would pull up that message, and I would have to go tell the manager about it. Go ahead.
It would but I was just it's one of those things. Is like humans are fallible. We get tired, we get lazy, whatever, and you're making it so easy to catch things that someone, when you're doing a lot of this, would probably miss, right? And
whenever they would audit me, because every once in a while we would get audited to make sure we were doing good, I would have very few errors compared to most people.
That's awesome.
And I would have done more work. It was really, really deep. And the whole time, I never showed anybody about any of it until the end. But, I mean, it looks very complicated whenever you start a GUI. But I didn't have all of this to begin with. I didn't have this whole box down here.
That's an excellent point, too. Yes. Baby step.
I started just pulling the information and then seeing what was wrong with it. And then from there, I added my logic.
Yeah.
So each day, I just added one new thing.
Yeah. The only thing I'd also say is for someone who, if you're just starting this, what you could do is try to think a little bit into the future of other things you think you might add. And at least if you have some idea, what you'd probably do is you'd start off with a much bigger area, and then just still do what James is suggesting is you don't, you take up just a small part here and there. Don't try to add it all at once, right? Just baby step into it and slowly add to it. But I found I concerned myself way too much with aligning certain things, and then I would add new stuff. Then I'd realize I had to go realign all this other crap again and again.
Yeah.
So,
And before, like, everything's hard coded in this. I didn't have like y+1 to make it go down.
Yeah.
So everything was hard. I didn't understand anything like that before.
I literally made a video on that to make sure I could understand it when I actually wanted to use it, because it was very confusing to me. And I used, what was it, Anchor? There are like 2 libraries that helped with some of the stuff, and I made it, because I don't really do GUIs, but I made, I think, 2 videos on it to help remind myself, because you're right, it's not overly complex, but boy, that once you learn that Y plus and starting a new column versus a new row or whatnot, it really helps.
It definitely does. And I still kind of get confused on it, but I just have a lot of trial and error, and I figure it out.
Yeah.
So if it looks diagonal, well, then I added something wrong.
Yeah.
So what I hope more people can understand is that AutoHotkey is not as complex as it sounds. It's just a whole bunch of puzzle pieces, and you just put them together. And then once you have that puzzle that you molded, you have your final product.
Right.
Go ahead.
I don't see that you did a lot of accelerator keys, but if you wanted to, right, you get to choose how the interface works and what's intuitive to you. I mean, it's when you realize you get to completely control everything, like it's so much more intuitive because you laid out how it makes sense to you.
And yeah, this here made perfect sense to me. Like, I would only use the number pad to do everything, to look up all the contracts, because I would just hit the big number pad plus and it would type that J for me and all the numbers. It made everything just so much simpler. I tailored it to myself, basically.
Yeah, exactly. Hey, I'm curious. I see you have a timer, something counting seconds down in the bottom right. Mm-hmm. Was that to help you just track how long you've been doing something, or?
I don't remember why I put that on there exactly. I know I used the variable to calculate how many contracts I did in a certain time, and it would tell me how many contracts I did per. Oh, wait, no, this timer, if I would go on the next contract, it would tell me, it would reset to 0.
Okay.
So that was a timer to see how long I've been on the current contract, because I had to do one every 55 seconds. So with this, I should have had it highlighted if it was over 55 turn red, but this is only like 80% done in my mind. I had way more I wanted to add to it, but for certain reasons, I moved from Florida to Texas, and that's where this job is at, in Florida. But yeah, it's just amazing what you can make with AutoHotkey. Like, one project I just made a couple of days ago is I'm gonna stop sharing my. Oh, I guess I can still share it. It's a YouTube pop-up. Like, there's sometimes I used a pop-up video for Google Chrome, and some music videos won't pop up because you have to be on the YouTube site. So I wanted to bypass that. So, like, I have it set where as soon as I have any YouTube link copied in the clipboard, this will pop up. And then it downloads the video really quick, which is another tool, not an AutoHotkey thing, but you can use other programs with AutoHotkey.
Sure.
It's just a short video. Sorry. 26 seconds.
So that's getting rendered right now, is what you're saying? It's a video from YouTube?
It's a file on the computer right now.
Oh, okay.
And then once it's done, it deletes the file. So that way there's no ads, because YouTube, it displays the ads in. But any video I want, it will just pop up right there, always on top. So if I'm watching like one of your videos, sometimes they're real long, I want to be doing some other browsing and stuff, I can still
What? I'm kidding. Yeah.
Hey, they're like hour longs, man. I love it, though.
I know. Some of them, some of them are crazy. Mm-hmm. Especially my earlier videos, even with just me, I didn't break them, into bite size, and that's I go back and go, yeah, I wish I had made them like 5 minutes or so, and kept them breaking them up just to help people go with the flow instead of going, where in the world, did he explain this part? Yeah.
Mm-hmm. But that YouTube thing, that was really fun to make. That's something I've always wanted, but nobody's had something that works the way I want it to. I want to update it to where I can have little options in there, have it follow the mouse. So whenever I move, it's just the video following it.
Oh,
I've
neat.
done that with like VLC media player.
Yeah.
I've had it set to where it goes frameless and it's just a little video that follows me. It's really, really fun to do. I multitask a lot.
For VLC, because I'll often, or sometimes I'll have a video that I either need to transcribe or I'm trying to take notes from and make some good bullets off of what they said. Mm-hmm. And so it was annoying because I'm an okay typist, but I can't type at the speed of what, people are talking at. And so like that, in order to pause it, just wasn't easy. So I wrote one where I can hit I have a browser back and forward down by my thumbs beneath the space bar. So they're just really convenient. Okay. And so I can just hit it and it will pause. It'll toggle the pause and play on VLC. And so I can be typing, hit it, just to pause it while I catch up, and then hit it again and it starts, and I can just keep typing. And yeah, it's although I am literally, I activate VLC and then I think hit the space bar if I remember right in order to get the hotkey on there. Versus Chad was like, hey, Windows Media Player has COM interface that you could automate it, completely programmatically, not have to do that. And I had already done this, so I didn't switch over to it. But whenever there's a COM solution now, I'm always just like, yeah, you know what? It's so much more reliable and fast, and so I generally go that route. But yeah,
COM is amazing. Like I just made a script for my dad.
Cool.
He owns the rights to 110 different American classifieds, and whenever he uploads the file, the way that they have it designed, it's 110 upload buttons on one single page, and it is the longest page I've ever seen. So I have it where COM goes in there and it just automatically clicks each one and has the file upload, and he keeps clicking whatever file he wants to upload, and it makes it so much easier.
Nice.
It's amazing what you can do with COM. It just goes in, opens the site, signs in.
Yeah, and that's where understanding more of the DOM in Java, well, not necessarily JavaScript, but the DOM, I guess, helps you so much more efficiently use COM to programmatically do things. Because, and it's still, I've learned a lot, and I still don't, I probably know like 1/100th of like what's there, right? It's
oh yeah. Once you realize how much is out there, you're like, wow.
Yeah. Yeah, I remember one in particular. I was trying to do something in Jackie, who on the forums, Holy Black Man or Black Holy Man, I keep reversing him, but he's like, well, why don't you just do this? It was a table, and he's like, because the data I was getting happened to be in a HTML table, and I was trying to get cells, and what I always did was I would get all the text and then use a regular expression to parse out what I wanted. And he showed me how if it's a table, like you can go get row by row and cell by cell so easily, each one individually, and it blew my mind. It just totally changed how I viewed everything. But I'm like, what the hell is this table? Where'd that come from? And he's like, it's part of the DOM. And I'm like, well, how would I know that? I'm like, I don't understand like how I'm even supposed to think that like there's something out here that does this, Anyway,
that's really neat.
Yeah.
It's like you're turning that table into an Excel sheet.
Yeah, exactly. And you can get exactly what you want and detect how many rows there are. And yeah, it was, now I always, that's one of the things when I'm getting data, I'm like, is it a table? Oh, okay. Because it's so much easier if it is. But yeah, just playing with it. Actually, Chad the other day showed me, I didn't know this, but, and I don't know, I'll try to explain it real quickly here. But like usually if you use like, let's say get element by ID or by tag name or any of those, class name, and if you put like after that, especially for not the ID, but the other two are arrays, and you put your brackets with a 0 and then get like inner text, right? it'll get that. But if that element doesn't exist, it will error out. And what Chad showed me the day was, instead of using just the, like, let's say it's get element by class name. I'm looking at my notes here because I'm planning to make a video and incorporate it. But instead of using, like, let's say get elements by class name in the bracket, if you add in a dot item and then the bracket with your number, and then the dot inner text. So just like you would, but insert a dot item in front of the brackets. If it doesn't exist, it doesn't error out. And I'm like,
okay,
really? I'm like, that's fascinating, because I'd always throw in a try, and I'm like, okay, it works, but like this is just cleaner to me. So I need to.
Yeah, I need to see a snippet of that sometime, because that's an issue I still deal with.
Yeah, I was like, man,
that's helpful.
Yeah, I often would build in a try, and it's just like, this is so much cleaner. And I'm like, how long have I been doing this? And he happened, because I've seen him do it, but he never explained that it actually had that benefit, and so I never adopted it. And then I forget why, we were working on some web scraping stuff, and he actually ran into the error, and I'm like, what was that? And he's like, oh yeah, this happens. And I'm like, if I hadn't asked for the follow, it's one of those things, like, and you mentioned it earlier too. I'm some of these videos, part is I love sharing the code. I love meeting people that are doing this, but I'm also trying to get my finger on what makes us different than the non, people who actually get into, finding better ways to do stuff. And I think part of it is that curiosity, right, of just going, oh, that's neat. What was that? I want to learn more. And part of it's the whole refusal. Like, I can't remember if we were in the interview or not, but you alluded to earlier, like you were hitting this and it was painful, right? And like you wanted to find a way. Oh, it was the game you were talking about, I think. Like you wanted to find a way to not have to click all this and click all this. And I'm reading some other books on marketing and direct mail and stuff. It's funny, you were talking about the spam, like, type junk mail, but I'm reading a bunch about direct mail companies and how successful and amazing it can be for your business if you do it right. But several of the authors now I've seen, they were talking about, hey, I would be doing this thing, and I was trying to copy what everyone else in the industry did, and everything sucked. And it's like, and I said, there's got to be a better way, right? And several authors in these different books I'm reading said, I just thought there has to be a better way. And so they went out and found and basically developed their own way, which was not how anyone did it. And they took off, right? And really made often, millions of dollars, or hundreds of millions of dollars in some cases. And, but I think that's part of that, of like, not sitting back and just saying, well, this is the way it is, right? And taking it as it's that desire to go find a better way. And I think it's one of the key things what I don't understand is, like, how do we get more people to actually take that mindset, right? I don't know if that's a possible thing to do.
I want more people to have that mindset too. Like, one thing I would like to do is to go into businesses and see how they do things, and then make it more efficient with automation or whatever. And then I want it to be called Forget About It. I think that's just great. But with Forget About It, I want like a whole bunch of different programs. So one of the program, not with the businesses or anything, but tutorials to teach people. Like, I have a very rough prototype of it. It just goes in and changes the wallpaper just to show somebody step by step on how to do it. But I want to make a bunch of tutorials and then have ultimately AutoHotkey be in there so people can see how easy it is, and the fact that everything I've been showing them is done with AutoHotkey.
Yeah.
So I think if people understand stuff a little bit better, then they won't fear it.
Absolutely.
One quote that Albert Einstein has is, you can't explain something simply, then you don't understand it well enough.
Yeah, amen.
So, and that right there is beautiful if you think about it. And another thing that he said is, it's not that I'm smarter than you, it's that I stick with problems longer. And that right there is powerful. Because that anybody has the potential to make whatever they want as long as they stick with it.
I was telling my son, we were actually talking about Thomas Edison and how, he after making 5,000 light bulbs, he was interviewed by this guy. And at the time, I didn't realize this. At the time, nobody on the planet believed like the electrical light bulb was even ever going to be possible, right? And yet here, after 5,000 tries, he gets interviewed, and the reporter's like, hey, no one else believes this is even going to be a thing. He's like, how do you still, like, well, how did, and Tom said, was like, hey, you know, I don't view that I failed 5,000 times. I viewed I'm 5,000 times closer to solving, you know, this thing. And I told my son, I said, you know, I don't know if I have that dogmatic of an attitude, but generally speaking, I said, I'm not the smartest guy in the world, but man, I stick with it, and I've never given up. I'm like, I will say, I know I can do it, right? It's going to take time, and often what I'll do is I'll get it close enough to where I don't, like in a script, I don't automate the entire thing. I'll automate, you know, a little bit, and then I got to get something done, and so I finish it, but I come back to it and automate a little bit more, right? But I actually like the hitting my head against a wall trying to solve it, because the harder it is, and sometimes it might be, when I was first learning macros and SPSS, which is where like I started learning really kind of programming type concepts, I spent like 2 days on getting these 1.5 or 2 lines to work, of just getting nowhere, of just solid, you know, like 15-hour days too, just hammering it out and trying stuff. But I'm like, I just refuse to give up. You know, I'm like, I know it can be done. And unfortunately I didn't know anybody to ask, but, you know, and I finally got it. I mean, it took me a while, but I got it. Yeah.
It's so rewarding once you get something.
It is.
The way you want it.
Yeah.
Like, this is a dumb script that I made, but for that RuneScape game, they have other sites where you can put your gold in and then gamble with it. So I automated a roulette game, and I just kept playing the roulette table over and over again. But I would have the logic in there. If it was a losing streak, I would keep incrementing the bet. And once I win, I would reset back to the first initial bet. So it'd be a lower number. But if you win at all, it's like you won every single one of those bets, basically. So anyway, just being able to automate that.
Yeah.
I was able to make millions off of it, but I got greedy and made my initial bets bigger, so it just exponentially got bigger, and I lost it all. But all I wanted to do was automate that. Like, anything you can imagine, you can have it out there. You just got to think what you need in order to get it done. You just take it one step at a time.
Yeah, that's a big part, is just don't try to do everything. You know, and the other thing this morning I'm actually working on one where it had to do with the second to last webinar we had with automating an Android stuff, and on this one I couldn't see the API traffic, even though I can see it, but it's encrypted and that. So I'm automating. I'm going to display what I want on the screen, and then I'm going to screen clip it, and I'm going to use OCR on it to grab the text that I want and then save it. And so I was laying it out of like, okay, well, what do I need to do? And I'm like, okay, I need, so I wrote a line, I need to get the coordinates of this. And then I need to, you know, scroll the thing, or I need to store it I need to actually grab the clip and then save it as a file. And then, you know, I'm just breaking it down. And it's so much easier when you start breaking it down. One of the things I did at TI with our email campaign, I used to have to, it was a really complicated process. I would have to get the list and upload it, and then tie it to this creative and deploy it and do this other crap. And I did it all in my head, of like this whole entire process. I never wrote it out. And then a friend of mine he has a background in programming, we were talking about, he's like, why don't I diagram this for you? And so we went in, it took us like an hour, and he's sitting here drawing, and he was drawing how it was all going back and forth and handing things back and this and that. And I didn't realize how complicated it was, because I just worked it all out of my head. I worked out what I had to do, but I never typed it out and, you know, diagrammed it, because that would have made it so much easier if I had. And I'm like, now granted, he knew exactly, like, his little things meant something, like, you know, the information parts in had a certain look to them and other things, but I still could have made my own system, right? But anyway, that is a big one, of just write out the big things of what you got to do, break it down into smaller things, and focus on the little bits of each one. And yeah, it's.
Man, what I do is I have a to-do list at the top of my scripts, and then if I think of something, I don't need to work on it just right there. I'll put it up there, and it's not very organized, but it works for me.
Yeah, I'm too old school, so I have my I literally have my my little pieces of paper that I write on, because I love physically crossing off things off my list. It's just it's so satisfying. So I still like that. It's also just quicker for me. But I think my interview with Ryan, he had I don't know if you saw that one, Ryan Wells. He has a really cool one where he it's an AutoHotkey and it pops up just in a text file. But I think for the longer run solution things that have a bigger time span, it helps him stay more organized and keep focused on it and stuff. And I'm like, yeah, I can see when it's not a day-to-day, this is my day-to-day stuff, what I have to get done. And I think that one is more of like, oh, it's not just today. It's a longer, here are things I want to work on. And I liked that idea because it's recorded and I can easily move things around, But yeah. So and I don't recall, did you have anything else to share that you actually use now, or?
Man, I had a hard drive that had a whole bunch of scripts on it, but I lost most of that.
Ouch.
Yeah, whenever I'm using AutoHotkey, a lot of the times I have little itty bitty projects where I just use script and then I write it. There's not a lot of scripts that I have to where I constantly have them running or anything. But like that YouTube one, let's see, I'm trying to think if I have any new ones.
Everything I do is under Dropbox, by the way. That's my thing. It's like, it's just.
I'm using Google Drive now.
Good.
But oh man, it sucks whenever you lose all your stuff.
Oh, I can't imagine. Yeah.
Like, I don't have that little bit of code to make VLC follow the mouse.
Yeah.
But I had it all programmed to wherever it was on the side of the screen, it would flip it over to where it was neat. I might forget about it. Touch. See, I'm gonna show my screen. This is just that little project I'm working on. It's not great yet, but okay. Main program. Alright. I have it where the GUI changes based on what you click. Launch tutorial. It's gonna be on the other screen.
Yeah.
Oh, I have to wait for it to finish doing a couple things. My wallpaper's gonna change in a second. I don't know, it didn't. Well, it didn't work. But did you see the mouse moving?
No, I didn't notice it.
Yeah, let me put it on the other screen now. Sorry.
That's right.
Main screen. And the way I have it set is it'll do different actions each time and go to a random. Because of this right here, it won't right click, but it's supposed to right click and go to personalize. It's not going to find it because it's the other window, but okay. Anyway,
there it goes.
That's another little program that I did. That's what I want to start teaching people how to use it. I'm recreating the GUI altogether, and I wanted to use images, so that's what I got for it. For some reason, if I try to run this code again, it will quit. So I don't understand on the second time it does. So I stopped working on it, and I'm going to get back to it after I work on some other projects. So it's not giving up on it. It's just letting my mind think. But even if go ahead.
No, go ahead and finish your thought.
Even if a project doesn't work the way you want it to, if you just let it sit in the background and come back to it, you're going to get it working the way you want it to.
Yeah. And it's amazing also, regardless of whatever you work on, like later you repurpose and reuse things so often. You work on something, you don't really see how you're going to use it, and then later you're like, oh, I can use this thing I did. Well, go ahead.
One way I like to look at programming is like Lego blocks. You have the two ones, and then like I don't know what the pegs. Okay, the two pegs, then the 3 pegs and the 4 pegs. They all do different things if you think about it. So you can think of a command as a Lego block. And once you have all these Lego blocks, you can build what you need, and you just have to learn about all these other little Lego blocks or commands like mouse move. So once you think of it as these little blocks that you can put together, it is whatever you want to create out of those Lego pieces.
Well, and I think actually a very critical point of that is the smaller you can compartmentalize it, the more flexible and how you'll think to reuse it. Otherwise, you're like, oh, that doesn't do this. It does this thing. And like, no, but you know what? Parts of it do. You can borrow from it, right, and repurpose what's in there for various other things. Yeah. What I was going to ask you was, have you either tried to get other people to use AutoHotkey, or do you have friends or anyone using it?
I've tried, but no one actually utilizes it.
I'm starting a club. Yeah, I know. It's like it's crazy to me because I'm like, it's so powerful and amazing, and yet, I very few people have I got to actually adopt it and use it. Other than they might use a script I gave them, but they don't actually program, which is it's fine. I'm glad I helped them, but I like teaching people how to help themselves.
Yeah, it's like teach a man to fish, he eats for a lifetime.
Yeah.
I don't understand why. I mean, I guess just because of the fear of not knowing, but they don't want to put the time into learning it.
Yeah.
Languages are like a whole other language, computer language. You just got to think in it that way.
Yeah. But then the other one, I don't know if you saw the interview with Raptor X, but we were talking about it overall because he mentioned precisely that, and but it is also like programming languages. Once you learn one, picking up another one is so much easier, right? The concepts is just syntax and understanding differences and how it works. It's not nearly as hard as like a human language. Spanish and French, or Italian, you can cross between somewhat easily, but I think in programming it's just so much easier because you get the concepts right, and it's just syntax difference.
It's like each computer language is its own accent, if you want to look at it that way.
That's a good one. That's a good way to think of the accent. Yeah, I like it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so awesome. This has been fun. Is there anything else that we should talk about? I think we're good.
I can't really think of anything. I just wanted to share how I use AutoHotkey.
Cool. Yeah, thank you.
Any task you can use it for.
Well, and that one I was just going to say was I love that attitude, like you said, and I totally wholeheartedly agree with it. Of it's just anything and everything you do, right? And I even admitted like several times, like it's a never ending thing. Even I've been using AutoHotkey for quite a while, and I still would be like, holy cow, I do this over and over, or I didn't think about it, but I could automate this part of something I'm working on, and it's just I've gotten better at spotting how I can use it, but it's not like I never end. And I love the whole idea of your thought on looking at different things and realizing you can use them in so many different ways, right? That over time, it's I need to really kind of lay out, because there's a lot of stuff in AutoHotkey I've played with. I mean, I have an amazing library of files that I've worked with and tried, but I've never did nitty gritty stuff with a lot. I've run them, but I've never forced myself to learn, like especially specific DLL calls or sending commands and command clicking and this and that. And I know that's really powerful. And I know Chad has done stuff for me where I've seen it, but I should probably start forcing myself to dig into some of them, because it'll make me realize there's other things that, like, oh, you know what, I can automatically close, like actually a good one would be the Zoom, which I like as a overall way to talk to people, but they have three windows, and I can never find the one that I want at that point in time. But I'll bet you I could find a way to where I hit a hotkey and it automatically does what I want it to do, right?
Yeah, just whatever you imagine, you just put those pieces together. Yeah, it'd be easy to do that.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for being on today. We're good?
I believe we're good, yeah.
Awesome. All right. It was good talking to you. And like I said,
thank you for having me.
When you're in Dallas, let me know. We'll hang out and really dive into some more code and have some fun.
Oh man, I'm looking forward to it.
Awesome. All right. Talk to you later.
Bye.